Eric, good to see you.
You too, Bobby.
Do you have Carolina blue on purpose underneath? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do. Oh, I do too, but not on purpose.
You do, yeah, you do.
This wasn't in your honor.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
That's funny because I was talking most everything I have has a hog on it or a Razorback on it.
Yeah.
Like red or phone or a lot of my clothes. Do you have North Carolina stuff everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
And like your
And now, which is weirder, but we're involved with the Hornets too. So I have purple and teal. So it's Carolina blue and purple and teal.
What do you mean involved with the Hornets? Are you part of the ownership?
Yeah.
Dang, I bought a pickleball team. I don't have an NBA team though.
Football teams are cool too.
But what's up with the so what's LaMelo gonna do?
We'll see. Bobby, we'll see. There's a really important draft coming. Okay,
yeah.
So I got to be friends with MJ a few years back, and when he sold the team, and it was one of the weirder calls you ever get in your life. But MJ goes, "Hey, I want you to be involved with the Hornets ownership group." I was like, "What does that mean?" He said, "I want North Carolina presence. I want people that are local. The group that's buying it's out of New York, private equity." And he said, I want you to do it. He said, "I'll help you if you need help." But he said, "I want you to be involved." So you don't say no to Michael Jordan. So I got involved.
That's super cool in a couple of ways. One, because it is Michael Jordan, the greatest athlete or pop culture sports figure in our lifetime.
100%.
I think, right? It's like Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods.
100%.
Two, that Michael Jordan played for North Carolina.
Right.
And for you, that's such a personal thing.
Right.
And that now, that you talk to him on the phone. Mm-hmm. I'd have been like put it on speakerphone recording it. So what do you do as like part owner?
Well, the great thing about the Hornets is the majority owners. So you have majority and minority, but the majority guys are you can get different groups in the NBA. But sometimes you get a majority that owns 95% of the team, and you're just involved. But our group's really good about keeping us involved and all the decisions we're making. So, a lot of it revolves around draft picks. A lot of it, we renovated the arena there in Charlotte. We did a big renovation. So you kind of have a 3 to 5 year plan. And Charlotte needs it because the Panthers aren't awesome, and the city needs it. So we're on a 3 to 5 year plan, really through draft picks. That's the best way to build a team. And luckily, or unluckily, the past couple of years, we've got some good draft picks. So that's the game we play right now.
Dang, I wasn't expecting that. That's awesome. I put a bunch of money into the Nashville baseball team. So if we get a baseball team here.
Yeah, Nashville will be a great city for that.
Yeah, let's go. Then I'll call you up, be like, "What's up, owner?"
100%.
Yeah.
That's right.
When did you get your first guitar?
13.
Why'd you get it?
I was writing songs, poetry kind of song things, and I was having to sing the melodies in my head. And got it as like a Christmas gift. And then it took me a little bit to learn to play it. But, that was just an avenue for me to get the songs out.
Did you take to it immediately?
Yeah.
Were you good at it quickly?
Yeah.
Do you have a brain that allows you to not just write lyrics, but how do you compute music? Like, how were you able to do key? I mean, how did you learn music?
That's a great question. I don't know. It was the fastest thing that I was able to kind of get. And then you learn a lot of that too in, earning your salt, where I got in a band pretty quick. I mean, I was in a band at maybe 17. I wasn't 18 years old. And I started just playing in bands and some shady places. And I did the chicken wire thing. I've been at that show. I've had a band member leave the stage during a song and go fight a guy in the parking lot and make it back before the end of the song, and that guy was my brother. So we've done that during now. When you make it back for the end of the song, that's doing quick work, But it was a Skinner song, so it was a little long. But I've done all those. I've done all those things, and you learn a lot from those situations. I always talk about in the world we live in now, and you know this. In the world we live in, it's easier to get discovered and to earn a following. But it's harder to earn that as a musician, where you can, and I'll give you an example, and I won't name a name, but there was an act recently that I like a lot, and we were talking about our next tour. And it's a person who has a presence, social media, whatever. And I said, "Hey, we'd love to have you." They don't have a band yet. They've not toured yet. That's all just on what they do on their channel. They've not played yet. And it's like, you know, you've not taken anything on the road. You don't, right. And that's a problem because you learn so much from being in those situations. And what I've found in my career, you're going to get in big moments. And if you don't feel like you deserve the big moment, you might not meet the moment. And those early days allow you to know when you get to that moment, you've put in the work to earn that.
A few weeks ago, I was sitting just like this with Ringo Starr, who come over to the house, and we were doing this, and it's pretty legendary to have a Beatle, but he was really interested in talking about the same thing, and he talked about how they would play 13 hours a day, and they were playing clubs constantly, and that now people aren't playing anywhere.
Right. It's a huge problem.
And that it's actually taking the overall product, and it's not, and he didn't say as good, but it's not as consistent as it was back when they were going. I mean, you go all the way up until the last 7 or 8 years or so, probably, whenever people are able to create without actually having to go out and do it.
Right.
And, you know, I think he was a little concerned for the future of music as far as live music, because these guys aren't out playing in order to get good. That feels a bit about what you're saying.
I am 100% the same. And you can see it. Like, you can just see that. It's just a key part. It's a key part of everyone's journey, is that you're going to learn a lot about yourself. I mean, everybody should have those shows where the band outnumbers the audience, or those shows when you've got feedback all night, or the guitar player's guitar goes down. You still got to play. You still got to figure those moments out. Those disasters that you manage in those places are what allow you to get to a different place and grow. The growth is the biggest thing. It's hard to grow when you're putting out whatever it is and all of a sudden it's massively popular, but there's no journey from when you put that out to the popularity. There is no arc there. It just goes boom to boom. When you go straight up vertical that way, it's really hard to do what you need to do to be able to do this for a long time.
It's funny you talk about disasters, because I think some of the biggest growth in my career doing stand-up or doing like live television is screwing up and realizing the world isn't over. Just keep going, right? Like, just keep going.
Yeah, and yours directly would be related. Like, stand-up is exactly what I'm talking about.
You just have to keep.
You're in.
And you're
committed.
Out.
But you're committed.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. And that's what, if you didn't have that, I would venture to guess you would not be as good at what you're doing now.
I would agree.
Yeah, so that's the bones that I'm talking about. You got to earn those bones. And no pun intended. But you got to have those things, right?
For me, it's like doing it terribly, like having a disaster happen and getting through it. That gives me the confidence to do it and get through it again when it happens, to go, oh, the world's not ending right now. I got my bearings. I've done this before and it's gone wrong, and I've been just fine.
And also, you got to chase some things. So I'm assuming, since it's stand up, I haven't done it, but I know what I've done on stage. Sometimes you chase things that don't work.
Oh yeah.
But the chasing is what allows you to kind of you learn there, right? So and I've done that musically. Like, we've chased some stuff. Like, hey, you know what? We haven't played it before. Let's play. We've done that. But there's a lot of the younger people, and the problem is there's just not a mechanism for them that's fast, that they can go earn it on the road, because it's not instant gratification. Who wants to do that? You know, so they end up going from here to here. And back to the artist I was talking about, I was pretty surprised that I was like, wow, so okay, you got a pretty good following, but you don't have a band yet. We've not even went to, normally that's step 1. Where you are is step 12. You've went to step 12, but 1 through 11 is not there at all. So that's not good. You know, I would say, as someone who's done it a long time.
I'm a massive fan of Andy Kaufman because he was just brave. And Andy Kaufman died, I was probably a year old, didn't know him then, but he would go and just try things, what you're talking about. And sometimes they would go terrible.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would be amazing, and people still talk about them today. But I feel like you're that artist to where you will go and try things.
Yeah.
I've seen you try things.
Yeah.
And that would be mixed. Some people would be like, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen. And some would go like, what even just happened?
Yeah.
But where does that bravery come from?
I think looking at I think the fearlessness of the moment is something that's really important. And whether that's confidence or doing it or trying it, I try to put myself in when I go to shows. I would rather see a person try something and maybe not get it than see the same show I've seen 1,000 times. And that's just me personally. So I think a lot of times it's a safe spot with me sometimes when there's a great relationship that we've built with our crowd, back to what we're talking about, over a lot of shows and a lot of years. And I feel safe to, sometimes I'll go for something. And I feel comfortable with that. And it might not work. There have been nights it has not worked. It has been a disaster.
Do you know it's not working when it's not working?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100%. But I think we did, we were in Pittsburgh one night and we were playing golf the day. We did the arena there. And the guy we were playing golf with was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about Renegade? So in the fourth quarter up there, they play Renegade and everybody waves the terrible towels or whatever. And I was like, nah, that's cool. So in the van on the way back from the golf course, and this is right before meet and greet, we got back late, showtime. I send the band the Renegade thing, the song. I said, let's just try this tonight. And they're sitting, that's a complex song to try to come together in a hurry. And we started it, and it starts out a cappella. And I couldn't hear the a cappella thing when we started because it's, hell mama, that whole thing. And I looked at the band. I was like, I need a note. I said, what key? What did I send? I didn't know what I sent them. And 3 different guys gave me 3 different notes. Like it was D, C minor. And I'm sitting there going, so I started, it was a disaster. And I didn't even make it at the chorus. I was like, I called it off. Like I audibled. I punted. But it was one of those things that it's still people.
You called it off mid?
Oh, mid.
Yeah.
No, I had a bass player and a key, and I had a guitar player. None of us were in the same key. So, jazz is cool, but it just didn't really work. It didn't work in that setting.
Did you ever try it again?
I didn't try it ever again. No.
That is such.
But you know what? I learned that.
Yeah. I've also learned to cut losses.
Yeah,
like
this was never going to work.
Yeah, because nobody cares. Like if you cut, I've done that too. Where it's like, you know what, this joke ain't working. I'm gonna go and move off of it.
It's never gonna work.
Nobody goes home and man, he was in the middle of a joke and he quit and it sucked. I'm never going back.
They probably honestly went home and said they tried Renegade and it fell on the face. Like the rest of the show could have been the greatest show of all time. But that's what they're going to go home and talk about, and that's what I think is great about live music. It's experiencing a moment that no one else will ever get to experience on the rest of the tour.
Is that's why your shows are so different? Because you want the moments to be different?
Yes, and we try to change it. There should be something every night. It doesn't always have to be a song, the set list difference either. It could just be something that happens at the show that person knows, I had to be here and I had to be present. I couldn't have saw this anywhere else. I think that's what makes live music and the world we live in with streaming and all the stuff we're going to, it still makes it the most special thing because you can't really simulcast that and feel that the way you can if you're there.
When I talk about being an advocate, I think even in this record that's out, because by the time this comes out, this will be out the day of, that there's songs where you're an advocate as well. And so I think a big part of it is what you're doing for the communities and for people that maybe don't have a voice, but also for people that maybe need a voice. And I could pull up a couple songs, even like Johnny or Darkest Hour, those feel like advocate type songs, like you're speaking for yourself, but also for others.
Well, I think a lot of that also comes a little bit with we're a little bit of an anomaly that we got here completely on the backs of our fans early on because we didn't have a ton of industry success. We were a little bit pushed to the fringes. And I remember one year I played Grand Rapids, Michigan 9 times because I could get 1,000 tickets in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We just kept rolling back. How many times can we go to the well? Because we had to have gas money to be able to move that bus around, right? So a lot of that is the people that you end up seeing every night, and then something happens or you think about their lot in life. I think that comes out a little bit now when I think about that because I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in if it weren't for them.
Revisionist history is Eric Church moved to town, wrote a bunch of songs, was a successful songwriter, but didn't hit, and then he was a massive star. That's revisionist history.
Yeah, that's false.
What's the truth?
Came to town. I was different with what music I was writing, and early on it wasn't great. You come to town and you learn I mean, I say this to all young artists, is you can't imagine, and a lot of people dog now a lot of the songwriting thing and say, "Oh, it's Nashville songwriters." Nashville songwriters are the best in the world. I mean, they're greatest craftsmen in the world. And it took me a minute to come to town, and I was fortunate. I came at a time when we still sat across from each other and did that. Where now there's a lot of stuff that technology's involved, and that's fine. But I got to learn from a lot of those guys. So I came here, and my perspective when I came is going to be hard to believe, but there was a kind of a soccer mom type format. There were a lot of females. It was very driven that way. And I had a more masculine approach, and it was not liked by everybody. And I just had a different lane. But eventually got a record deal and got in that lane. But then that was a hard lane because we were a little different on the radio, and we had a hard time getting songs played because it didn't fit the formula at the time. And touring was interesting. So it was just the first couple albums were a really challenging time. Everybody comes to town, and a lot of these young artists, and they get a record deal and they think, I made it. I've done it. But that is just the beginning of the hardest part. And for us, it was in that first 2 album period before Chief that we were grinding on the road. There was one year we did over 200 actual shows in a year. And a lot of that was just to keep the money moving in at any level, to keep moving forward, to keep gaining ground. And at the time, a lot of people in the industry would have said, this doesn't really fit what we do, And it's a grind. It was a grind for us early.
Why did you move to Nashville? Was it to write songs, or was it to be an artist, and writing songs was going to get you to that place to be an artist?
Write songs.
You were a writer.
Yeah.
How did you know that was a job?
I found that out. I was in college and had a band, and I started, just playing some of my original songs in our cover set. And, people, the next time I would go back and play there, they would request those songs. And that just kind of where I started thinking, okay, songwriting's, I just never thought it was viable for me to be able to go and get a record deal and do that. It never crossed my mind. It just wasn't something I thought I could do. So I really wanted to come here and write songs. And, I met a couple songwriters when I moved here and kind of saw what they did and how they did it. And you go get you take a draw and you go write for a big publishing house and try to get songs cut.
So what'd you pack up, and what'd you move into when you got here?
I came to town in a two-tone 1986 Chevy Blazer, blue and gray. That's the color back then, man. And I had a guitar, had a duffel bag, and I found an apartment, but I didn't know where to be. When you move to Nashville, it's like I didn't know what was what.
Did you have anybody here that you could ask those questions to?
No.
So you blindly moved to town?
Yeah. I went to Broadway first. I tell this story at my chief's residency, as I came to Broadway because that's where the Ryman was. That's where, Tootsie's is. That's where, all these iconic things. And I tried to get gigs there, and I couldn't get a gig there because I came with a sack of songs and my guitar, and they wanted cover songs. And so I couldn't make it on Broadway. So I ended up over at Printer's Alley back in the day, there's a place called the Fiddle and Steel Guitar Bar. And what I found there were all the people that got kicked off Broadway. That's where they congregated, and I kind of found my tribe. And there were a lot of hit songwriters in that group. There were a lot of musicians in that group, and just kind of found my people and started figuring it out. But I took a job. I had a job at the Shop at Home Network. I sold knives. That was my job. Thanks for calling Shop at Home. My name's Eric. How may I help you?
You answer the phones?
Oh yeah, I was the phone guy. I had the little headset. Good stuff.
What kind of knives? Like what was your rap?
My rap at that time, I actually got fired because of my lack of rap. But I would answer the phone. I had the shift that was, I think my shift was 11 p.m. to like 7 a.m. I was the overnight shift. So that's the shift where the guy comes in. He's been at a bar, and he turns on Shop at Home. And there's the guy. We were looking at the studio. So where the phone bank was like an amphitheater type seating. And we all have our little chairs and our headsets on, and we're looking at them selling the knives out there, television studio in front of us. And this guy, would call in and go 3 o'clock in the morning, slurring, going, man, I gotta have some of these knives. It's like 300 knives for $59.99, right? And I actually, one night there was a guy that called in, and I could tell he'd had a long night, and I had a few of those too. And he was like, man, I just gotta have some of these knives, and he's slurring. I was like, yeah, he said, I said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do you a favor. I said, why don't you go to bed? And first of all, when somebody calls and says, I need a knife at that time of night, you think there's already a problem, right?
They don't need a knife.
Yeah, they don't, not right now. You don't need a knife right now. You need to go to bed. So I said, why don't you go to bed, and why don't you call me in the morning? I'll still be here, And he said, well, it says there's 3 left. I said, brother, trust me. There's more than 3 left, okay? You're going to be okay. And there's that thing where when you call into something like that, they'll say, for whatever purposes this call may be recorded, they do that. And they happen to record this call.
That's how you got.
That's how I got cut. That was it.
You're advocating for that dude.
I was advocating for that dude. They didn't like that Shop at Home, though. So
Dude, that's crazy.
They fired me.
What's up with the name of the record, Evangeline versus the Machine?
Well, so I think a lot of some of this somewhat started. There's a line in Johnny that's a very important song on this album because of the Covenant shooting here in Nashville. But there's a line in there that says, "Machines control the people, and the people shoot at kids." And what I've found having younger kids is there's so much of our life nowadays that's just so fast and disposable with how we consume anything. And what I've seen is it really rounds the edges off anything we try to do different or creative. That's just not what the world is set up for today. It's not set up for the patient part of that. And so I think that that line is when that title started. But the crux of this is Evangeline on the album plays almost a creative muse, that song. So it's that creative muse and following that versus the machine that makes it very hard to execute that. And that's the juxtaposition of what this is.
When you mentioned Johnny and the shooting, and that was very personal to all of us here because it was so close to us. Yeah. And it's probably close to a lot of people in a lot of places because it's so close to a lot of people. It's happening everywhere all the time. The Johnny versus the Devil went down to Georgia, that the song was playing. Like, is that part of the like you were thinking about when you wrote the song?
Yeah,
like, did you hear the song "Devil Went Down to Georgia"?
As I was, my kids go nearby here, and I was, which is a couple miles from Covenant, whatever. And the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is drop my kids off the day after the shooting, because they had decided that that kids needed to feel some normalcy and go back to school. And I remember I've never done anything harder than that when I watched them walk in that school. And both boys go in together. There's a bunch of people out front. Teachers are crying and everything. So everybody goes inside, and I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless, scared, all those things. So I just parked in the parking lot there, and I sat there. I didn't know how long I was going to sit there. I just felt like I needed to be there. And at some point in time during probably an hour, at some point in time, I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and there were parents that had done the same thing all the way down the line, moms and dads, and they were just sitting there. And I had the radio on, and it was down low. I wasn't paying attention to it, but That Went Down to Georgia was on. And there was a piece of that in that moment as I'm looking to my left and looking to my right and thinking about my kids, that, Johnny rosin up your bow and play your fiddle hard. Hell's broke loose in Georgia, and the devil deals the cards. And if you win, you get this shiny fiddle made of gold. And if you lose, the devil gets your soul. And I remember thinking, if only Johnny was confined, or only if the devil was confined to Georgia. He's out of Georgia. He's everywhere. And we need Johnny to come back and help. And that was it. And I pulled out of the parking lot finally, and I went home. And I did like and some of this may have went to the Evangeline versus the machine, because there is that Johnny versus the devil, that started that thing, good, evil kind of thing. And I went home and I said it would be interesting if a song was written from that perspective, where you bring back a character from a song we all know from 30, 40 years ago, and he gets to play a different role. And so I wrote Johnny.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm glad to hear that version, or the actual story behind how you wrote the song, because now it kind of all makes sense with the record, and even within the song, because you may just see the name Johnny and not understand.
Right.
But do you believe things happen for a reason?
Yes.
Do you believe that you heard that song at that time,
Yes.
so you could have that thought,
Yes.
so you could write this song?
Yes. I 100% believe that.
And so whenever you write Johnny, you call Luke Laird
Mhm.
and Brett Warren.
Yeah, I couldn't get out of it. I got in it. I just couldn't figure out how to quite get out of it.
So what do you tell them? Like, how,
I just sent it to them. I record kind of what I'm doing. And that time it was so fresh with what was going on. It wasn't, once I couldn't figure out how to land it. Like, I got it in the air and got it where it was supposed to go. And I was like, and it was probably, some of that was emotional, where I was so tied in, I had a couple things that I thought they weren't the right emotion. And so I was like, hey, check me on this. And then within a day or so, we had it. And then I kind of knew it was a different perspective and different thing. And then that was before I started the residency. And so in the residency, one of the big moments is I would play that song late in the show, and we would kind of do a flash mob choir that would come out behind the people and sing those choir parts. Ended up being a big part of the show, and also a big part of formulating what the conception for this album was, where I had voices, and then all of a sudden started thinking about strings and horns. I did Stagecoach, which was noisy, but I loved. And all these things, before I ever went in the studio, were taking us in a different musical direction. And I was starting to feel a different pull.
Was this the first song that you did for the album, maybe not even
Yes.
knowing it was going to be the album?
Yeah, first song.
So did this song actually create the rest of the album?
I think it created the template for how we were going to do the album. So, a lot of people look back and they say, well, your last record was 2021. That's not really true. We recorded the album in December of 2019 and January of 2020, and COVID happened, and we sat on it for over a year, like everybody else in the industry. So I've not been in the studio in 5 years. And I think that I've got a lot of songs. There's a lot of different avenues we could have went down for this album. And I've done this long enough, I understand this song is going to be a hit song. I get it. And there were different lanes we could do. But it was really Johnny and then Stagecoach that started to develop a different path that was interesting to me.
I'm a big Tom Waits fan.
Yeah, me too.
It was passed down to me because I think as a kid, you don't really move toward a Tom Waits tone. Started listening, I was like 12 or 13 years old. Love the rasp, love the grittiness. Yeah. You did a Tom Waits song on this. Mm-hmm. Clap Hands. Why that song?
So this is, you've already asked me, you've already answered this in a question you already asked me. And do you believe things happen for a reason? So I was searching for filling out the rest of this project. And the challenge with this project is not every song fit the room with who was in the room, and not the people in the room fit the song. So let's say we had 50 songs for this project. And what you're finding is those songs that made it are really the only ones. We cut other songs. It didn't work. This didn't match this. So I was sitting in my house, and there was and I'm telling you, On the Nickel is one of my favorite songs of all time. And I was sitting in my house, and it was the end of, and I got to go back and figure out exactly what it was because I've been asked this already, but it was either the end of like a Netflix series I was watching or a movie, and on the outro, on the credits, Clap Hands comes on. And I remembered it. I was like, oh yeah, it's been a while since I've heard this. And I was listening to the vibe of it, and I had just left the studio that day, and I was thinking about the room, and I paused it. It was on like a DVR thing, so I paused it. And I grabbed my guitar, I rewound it to when it started, and I sat there and just worked up the progression. And then I laid it down with an acoustic guitar. I sent it to Jay, my producer, and I said, hey, call me crazy, but I feel like this would really work with who we got in the room, with the weapons we have there. And he sent back almost immediately, I'll see you in the morning. And we went in the next day and cut it. So, within a 12-hour period, I heard it on a TV show, and it was cut the next day. And there's a freneticness to that with the voices and the breaths. There's a thing there that was really interesting to me that I hadn't heard on a cover of that song. And Tom Waits is creatively just an animal, and this record's a lot about creativity.
Home, obviously, super important to you. I guess since we're here, let's do it. I was talking to some friends about the news story that came out where they're like, Eric's building these houses in North Carolina. Where did that version of you giving back, because you've done it in many ways, you did the concert, where did that like building a neighborhood come from?
From the concert. So when the concert was over with, we were able to raise a substantial amount of money. And when we had raised the money, immediately it was, okay, what are we going to do with it? And there were 4 or 5 charities that were lined up there that are great charities. They do great work. And they said, why don't you give it to us? And my next question was, okay, what are you doing? And a lot of them were doing immediate stuff, keeping people alive, water, diapers, just temporary housing. But none of that did anything to change the trajectory of the lives that the people who had lost homes, none of that was going on. So I asked about housing, and nobody had an answer for me on housing. So as opposed to what the government does, where they come in and they provide temporary housing in a different location to have a roof over their head. So basically, and you know the area some, so it's little small communities. And there's not a lot of people in these communities. Some of these communities are 300-400 people. And you're taking a majority of those people and you're moving them. You're going to lose the community because you lost the people. So we started trying to see, can we do this ourselves? And so I started working my Rolodex and my phone and calling people. And I got to Kevin Clayton of Clayton Homes, and I said, hey, can we do this? And I called a buddy of mine who runs Cisco, and I said, can we do this? And they said, yeah, if you want to do it, we'll do it. So we really came up with a novel idea of building permanent housing, not temporary, and not only allowing them to live there for a period of time, cost-free, but the key to this, we call it Blueprint for the Blue Ridge. The whole key is we want to give them a path to ownership for that home. So a lot of these people are people that maybe could have never owned a home in their life because of their financial situation. But now, with our help and with the people who gave help, you can change that entire family's generational life, not just theirs, but their kids. And so for those 45 families, the idea would be they'll end up owning those homes. And we just closed on 2 other properties. We're doing 2 additional properties. We'll end up doing as of right now, about 200 homes. But the best thing is, as I looked around the country, nobody's done this, which is shocking, by the way, that in the United States of America, this is not done. But it wasn't done during Katrina. It wasn't done during any other disaster we've had. And affordable housing is a major problem in the U.S. And this is, when a disaster happens, it just shines a spotlight on that problem. And so we're trying to solve that the best we can in something that's blueprintable for other states when a disaster happens.
That was my question. Is this a template that other areas can use?
Yes. That's the whole purpose.
And that's all. Usually, again, I do a lot of food insecurity, where that's important to me back in Arkansas, right?
Right.
And it's, a difference in helping people right this second and doing some temporary, but also actually building them something that they can have. It's like give a person a fish or teach them to fish, right?
Correct.
It's a version of that.
Correct.
And the hardest thing is having something that you can easily pass along, a template, a formula that somebody else can use. But it sounds like what you guys are doing with that group that you're working with is able to produce that. And there is so much value in that for other people to just lay it down and do the same.
Right. You probably affect, from a government standpoint, like the way they would look at it, you're probably not affecting as many people in a minor way, where you take a big sum of money and you put more people in something for a year, but you're not changing those people's lives. Then you have problem number 2, which is year 2, year 3. So what we looked at was, if you can affect a smaller number and change their entire life and their family's life, it provides a pillar for the foundation of that community, it's a little bit different than what's completely different than what's been done. But it's what we're doing, and so far it's going well, and we'll see where we go from here.
It's interesting, the seasons of your career. I feel like this is very much the advocate season. But I feel like the last 5, 7 to 10 years, and I don't know if you ever thought you would end here or it'd be a part of your career where you're often spending a lot of your time and energy advocating for other people. Was that the plan? Was it purposeful at all?
No, I think a lot of that is things happen. I'm fortunate to have done what I've done in my career to be in a position that I could influence, specifically North Carolina. I could, when Hurricane Helene happened, I was able to help there. And then, all of a sudden you start helping and trying to help. It did intrigue me. I remember being on a call, and I was talking to some state legislators and a person from Washington involved with FEMA. And I remember saying, like, how is this not already been, why is this not what we do? Like how has this not been thought of or tried? And it just hadn't. And so the interesting thing for me was like, okay, I like stuff like that. Let's try something here. Let's try something that hadn't been done. It may not work, but nobody else is trying it. And what's happening is not working. So let's try something here. So I think a lot of that is just it's the position. Answer your question. You're just in a position in your life that you never thought you would be in, and you have a chance to use your voice and Rolodex to call people and move the needle.
I found that bureaucracy shuts down a lot of change.
Yeah.
And you need big, loud voices. And you talk about your Rolodex, but you need people that can be louder than the bureaucracy. Because if you have to go through 9, and I've had to do this at times, go through 9 different people to get one thing checked off, that was 3 months to get a small thing maybe changed. But if you can take a sledgehammer to it, which you usually can with louder voices and bigger tools, they'll often listen.
And that's the with what we did the federal government. I mean, that's what we were doing. As an aside, but like $9 billion went to the state of North Carolina from the federal government for Hurricane Helene relief. Right? You could give me $1 billion right now, and I can't weaponize that $1 billion. Nobody can. There's no down chain weaponization. There's not the contractors. There's not the land to purchase. So take your $1 billion, and what we didn't really think about that I've seen and I've been on 1,000 calls is as you go down the line from the money to putting people under a roof, we don't have that chain developed. So some of this is trying to develop one very small arm of that chain that, okay, we're into mid to long-term housing forever. We want them to own them. We'll take this lane, and you guys can figure out some other stuff. So it's not trying to solve all the problems, but it is trying to solve one of them.
Got about 4 more questions for you. I want to ask about another song, though, Darkest Hour. And based in concert in Carolina, like what happened there? Was it a bit?
It was written before. This is back to the things happen for a reason. I had written Darkest Hour, and I was listening to a guy at the time. Darkest Hour is a little bit interesting that it's a hopeful song. Wrote it by myself, and I wrote it about 10 days before Helene happened. I wrote it. I recorded it. I went to Florida. I was in Florida for something. I was on my way back when Hurricane Helene hit, and I got back home, and I remember seeing the devastation, which I couldn't fathom. With being from that area, I didn't recognize any of the areas that I knew intimately. And there's a line in that song, "In your darkest hour, I'll come running, I'll light your way." And we were way off schedule. We were nowhere near releasing a song. We were 8 months early. And I called John Peace, my manager, and I said, "Hey, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to regret if we wait till next year to put this out when I think this song could be an anthem mainly for the moment. Because what I realize is in this world, and we all know this, something happens and everybody pays attention. And then it's a busy world. News cycle in this world's in the hours, it's not in the days. And then something else happens. And I said, we need something just to keep people focused on this problem and that it's going to take years. And I said, I really want to put this song out. And I said, I know it's not a radio song. I know it's not what we would have done. But I said, I think it's a great anthem for the people there. And it ended up, everybody thinks I wrote it after Helene. That's not true. I wrote it before.
That's why I thought you wrote it after Helene.
Yeah.
But
it was sitting there ready to go. And that's where, sometimes you give a song its moment. Sometimes a song finds its moment. Mm. And that's one of those that it just did. And it didn't feel right to me to wait almost a year to then go, oh yeah, it felt like I was missing an opportunity there.
Did you and Morgan buy Field and Stream as a, hey, it's open, you text them, be like, let's buy it? Because we had every Field and Stream in Arkansas. My stepdad had all of them. Like that was a brand.
Oh, it's still a brand.
Like it was.
It's the OG.
Yes.
1871, it's the OG.
As a brand, it still exists, but the magazine, I didn't see the magazine after a while, like the actual paper.
It's coming back, now. Yeah.
So what was that? How did you guys decide to do that?
I've got a partner who I did Chiefs with, who called, who actually just kind of stumbled across a deal. Dick's owned it at the time. He stumbled across a deal.
The sporting goods store?
Mm-hmm. And he called, and we were actually getting ready to go on a golfing trip with Morgan. It was me, Morgan, and Ben. Ben Webern's his name. And he called and he said, "Hey, do we want to look at Field and Stream?" And I went, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, they're looking to maybe sell it." I said, "The brand?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Sold." I said, "Well, it was a Bible growing up for me," and they had let it kind of fall in disarray. And what really happened, it was such a big umbrella that they had let all the pieces be sold to different entities. And so what we were able to do was take about a year and go and pull all those entities back under that umbrella and buy each one of those little pieces. So for the first time in almost 100 years, it's back under the same roof. All the things are vertical.
You've unified the belt.
Right. All of it. So, and then so we talked to Morgan. And we were like, hey, we should do this. He had the same experience growing up that I did with Field and Stream. And it's been a ton of fun and doing well. It's a wagon. So it's fun. For me, it's fun from a writer's side. Some of my favorite writers and articles were those articles by guys who wrote for Field and Stream. There was humor, there was satire, that we were looking at I have a wall in my house where I went back and took all the old iconic covers. And what's interesting is you look up there and at the bottom there's the date and you're like, it's 1917. Like that's insane, that there's hand drawn, just an American icon. And they were telling me a story. One of the guys that's been at Field and Stream a long time, when World War II happened, they weren't sure how they were going to address that. It was such a big thing in the world. Well, the only thing that's on the cover of Field and Stream is outdoor scenes. And they couldn't figure out how they were going to address World War II ending. And they took a flock of geese in the V formation, the victory formation. And that's the cover of Field and Stream. And just stuff like that you think about a brand that you're involved with. And I keep saying to Stuart, to Ben and Morgan that, we are stewards of the brand. We don't own the brand. It's our job to get the brand to the next generation and to make sure it's taken care of because it's an American treasure.
You have 22 arena dates on the Free the Machine tour. All of them be different? A little something different?
Yeah.
That's from now on. Your life is you're going to present a different environment.
And I get bored. Like if I do a show on, let's say Friday and Saturday, if I do a show on Friday, I'm allergic to doing that same show Saturday. I just can't do it. So there'll be something that happens. And a lot of that I take myself where toward the end of the show, a lot of times I'll just get an acoustic and I'll just play for a while. And I'll bring up stuff I hadn't played or maybe a song nobody's heard. I do that at the end of a show. So
how's your memory with songs and things you've written forever ago? If people that play this, you're like, dang, I thought about that in 10 years. Can you do it? Can you pull it out?
Yeah. Pretty deep. Yeah. Well, I'm going to try it. Back to your thing. That's right. In 3 different keys, man. 3 different keys.
You're taking out Marcus King. I love that dude, and he's
Dude.
so good.
Yeah, he's talented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sat over here and talked forever like that.
He's a South Carolina guy, so he's near. He's kind of Carolina. So.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Not the
Kinda
same.
Carolina. He's
but
the other
yeah.
Carolina.
That's like a second cousin. Not,
Yeah.
not quite the same. You last thing. You playing golf at all?
I played this. I just got back this last night.
Oh,
I was in
trip.
Pebble. Yeah.
I played the Pebble Pro-Am when you played it a couple years ago.
Yeah.
You probably played it since.
I played this past year.
Yeah, I saw it. 'Cause we have the same golf buddy coach.
Yeah.
And so I saw he caddied for you. I was like, I should have taken you because I took my buddy Eddie and he sucks.
Yeah. It was actually a good idea. Now it doesn't really help when you're not playing well, and he's like telling you you can never fix it in the middle of the round, as you know. It's either there, or it's not. Once you start moving hands around on that stuff, it's a disaster.
I feel like he's like a good golf therapist.
He's a good therapy.
Yeah,
He's a good therapist.
that's what it is. I got a simulator behind here that, whenever I am having a bad night or anxiety or just want to get away, I'm going to crank out some balls. You have one of those?
I don't. I'm gonna come up here.
How do you hit?
I'm only 5 houses from here,
What?
so this is really easy. Now that I know, it's no
You
big
can
deal.
have a
Just
key,
leave
yeah.
the gate. Leave
I
the gate
trust you.
code.
Gate's
Yeah,
open.
Yeah,
Okay, last thing. Only 8 songs on the record.
yeah. There was 6, and I was very happy with the record with 6 songs. The 2 songs that weren't on the record were "Hands of Time" and "Rockets White Lincoln," and it had a vibe. The thing I like about this record, Bobby, is it's got it's a ride, and when you put it in, it's meant to ride it. And if you start and then you go to the finish, it's only 38 minutes, right? But it's meant to be ridden. And the 6 songs were great. I loved it. But it was a little thick. It was a little heavy. And I was missing a smile. I was missing a wry moment. And I told Jay that. I said, he said, what do you think? He said, we doing a 6-song album? And I said, well, I don't have a problem with that. But I said, there's something I'm missing a thing. And I'll relate this is important. So when Hurricane Helene happened, I called radio. I called Rod. I called the captains. And I said, I need a favor. I need you to lean in on Darkest Hour because I want to raise the awareness of what this is. And I'm raising money. And they did. And then what was interesting is in one of the conversations, they said, you're still really important to this format. And when the time comes, we need something that we can run with too. And I had Hands of Time. And that resonated with me because I was asking for help. And I understood the position they were in. I understand that. And when it came time to do that, that fit what could be the smile and lighter part of the album, along with Rockets White Lincoln. And it just ended up being the last 2 songs that filled out the puzzle.
Which leads me to this, and then we're done. What song almost didn't get recorded that ended up being a massive consumption or a massive just hit for you that you almost didn't record?
Smoke Low Smoke.
Why? Why didn't you not? Why did you almost not record it?
I didn't get it at the time. I mean, that was my wife and another my guitar player I had that kept saying. And what really changed it is we started playing it before I recorded it. We started doing a janky version of it live, and they climbed the walls. But I didn't get it in the moment. First of all, the label told me if I released that, they were going to drop me.
Because of what the song was?
Yeah, at that time. No marijuana song. There was no song like that in the year that it came out. Like it was, and first of all, we're all on our own path anyway. And the label was like, listen, if you do this, you just might as well go do it somewhere else. And so that was a big moment. But I got close to going, I don't know if it's going to work. This is not what I think. But
once it did it give you more, I hate to use the word credibility within the label, but did it give you?
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the next thing we did was made the Chief album. And we came out with Homeboy first. And they were, instead of fighting that, which they probably, a lot of labels would have, they just went, hey, I don't know. That Smoke song works. You just let him run a minute. They get whatever rope you gave him, let him use it all. So,
okay, and we talked about before you got here, but just the records out, the Evangeline versus the Machine, the Free the Machine tour. It's 22 days with El King and Marcus King and Charles Wesley Godwin, and yeah, it's awesome. Again, what I'm talking about I'm not just talking about the record, the tour. I'm just talking about what kind of you stand for now. Like, just generally, I think we talk about a brand like Field and Stream. I think that, pardon the cliche statement, the Eric Church brand now has turned into somebody who cares. And, like, I hope you like that. You didn't really pick it. It's kind of been put on you because you feel like helping. And
Well, there's a lot of parallels too. I mean, the longer you do something like in music, you think more about the people that did it before you. In music, you think about those artists, but like with Field and Stream, those writers and those stories and what that meant. I think the more you do something in any lane you're in, the more you have reverence and respect for the people that did it before you, and that leads you to widen out in a lot of different ways.
yeah, I think the Eric Church brand cares now, which is different than it was to me even 10 years ago, which was the Eric Church brand, don't give up. You know?
Yeah. Young and arrogant is a thing. That's also, it's very powerful. It's very powerful. I mean, I see a lot of artists now that are that way, and they should be that way. They should be. That's a little bit of a superpower. But as you get older, and you start to, there's other superpowers out there.
I appreciate the time, Eric. Good luck with everything. Yeah, you're making a difference, man. That's the coolest thing that I could say about somebody making a difference. So thanks.
Thanks, Bobby.